Welcome to this week's episode of AutoMundial, the weekly car news and review show, where this time we're looking at a new model from Morgan.
And we have the new Audi A3 with the recent release of the new VW Golf. It was only a matter of time, but how does it compare?
That's all still to come. First though, Land Rover has presented heavyweight boxing champion Anthony Joshua with a new bespoke Range Rover, showing off the capabilities of the brand's special vehicles department. It's covered in unique details with Joshua's crest, initials and signature emblazoned all around the Go Anywhere SUV. Inside there are plaques to show off his 4 heavyweight titles, but undoubtedly the coolest details are the interior door handles, etched with tiny boxing gloves. Elsewhere there are some Union flag badges and a bespoke shade of black paint to ensure it's unlike any Range Rover on the road. And, best of all, is what's lurking under the bonnet. No plug-in hybrid or diesel for Mr Joshua it seems, with a 560 brake horsepower 5-litre supercharged V8 taking care of business. It'll reach 62 from a standstill in a barely believable 5.4 seconds, on its way to a top speed of 155. It really is a heavyweight car worthy of a heavyweight champion.
It's safe to say the VW Group knows its way around a hatchback. The Golf, the Scala and the Leon all hail from the German giant stable, and they've all recently had an upgrade to welcome them into the new decade. And now too has its premium model, the Audi A3.
Now entering its 4th generation, the Audi A3 begins the 2020s with a new look, a new cabin and plenty of new tech. The new generation of A3 says hello and goodbye to a few of the Audi variants too. As with the Leon, the 3-door version has been dumped, but it is likely that we'll get a saloon and an RS3 later this year. It's slightly longer and wider than the previous iteration, despite having the same wheelbase. And it has a larger cargo capacity too, at 380 litres. It's the exterior styling though where we see an evolution of Audi's design philosophy. Note the headlights and taillights that we've seen on other new Audi models, and the larger honeycomb grille. The car sits on 16-inch rims as standard, while pricier models would have alloys up to 19 inches. Handling has been enhanced thanks to progressive steering with variable steering ratio, and this can be further improved with the optional suspension packs. The first lowers the car by 10mm, while the sport suspension option brings the car 50mm closer to the road. The cabin has been generously modernised and modified. A steeply sloping dash accommodates a 10-inch infotainment cluster, which can be height up to 12.3 inches if you so desire. This new system is a lot more incorporated than on the 3rd gen, and it is 10 times more powerful too. As mentioned, the A3 is from the VW group of hatchbacks, and as such, it shares its DNA with many of these other offerings. This is most apparent under the bonnet. So, as a result, the engine options are very much as expected. Petrol variants include a 1-litre 3-cylinder unit to kick-start the range, and a turbocharged 1.5-litre offering, which is also available with a mild hybrid. For diesel lovers, there is a 2-litre powertrain, also available with a mild hybrid. And it's the same story with the transmission. Buyers can choose between a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed dual-clutch auto. Initially, all models will be front-wheel drive, but more drivetrain layouts are expected with the S and RS models.
But it's not alone in the premium hatch class. The Volkswagen Golf may wear a more humble badge, but it shares an awful lot with the Audi. The engines, as expected, are déjà vu with the Audi, so it's just the looks, interior and price that can be judged. Starting with the styling, it's undeniably a Golf, despite now being in its 8th generation. The front end does look to have been styled with a ruler, but it's a smart-looking car with just enough visual impact to keep it current. So what about inside? As with the Audi, the Golf is all change. Even the most basic models get an 8-inch central infotainment system and a 10-inch multifunction digital driver's display in place of old-fashioned dials. On paper, the Golf isn't quite as well equipped as the Audi, and the styling is a little more plain. And the price reflects this, with the Golf marginally cheaper than the A3.
But the options don't end there. This is the Seat Leon, Spain's rakish answer to the demure Volkswagen Golf. The old model was a huge success, selling over 1 million units. And as a result, Seat hasn't mucked around with the styling too much. It's a clear evolution of the old car, but thoroughly modernised. It is, however, slightly bigger than the outgoing model, helping to improve cabin space, something the old car was often criticised for. The Leon's interior is largely the same as the Golf, and the top-spec cars get the same 10-inch screen you find in the Audi. But overall, the Leon is very golfy. That said, the Seat Leon does seem to be a genuine cut-price Golf. It looks better than ever and comes with all the cutting-edge tech we've seen on the new Golf. So is it the pick of the bunch? Well, if badges or brand loyalty aren't on your agenda, the Leon is surely a hatchback bargain.
Since we saw the first 992 generation Porsche 911s last year, we've been itching to see what the flagship turbo model would look like. And now, finally, the wait is over. And here it is, in Turbo S form. With 641 brake horsepower and all the usual turbo styling cues. It gets some turbo-specific wheels, which are wider at the back than the front, an even wider body than the standard Carreras with those classic side air intakes, and of course, the signature rear wing, letting everyone behind you know exactly what you're driving. Porsche has chosen to launch the S version before the standard model, which may seem odd at first. Porsche says though that 75% of the previous generation were S cars, making this the more important model. Interestingly though, Porsche is also planning a lightweight version. Normally, a lightweight 911 means a GT3 or a GT2, a stripped out, track-biased car with a half cage and bucket seats, but this time the turbo will be available with less sound insulation and various weight-saving features. This car though, the Turbo S, is an impressive feat in itself. It's worth bearing in mind that the previous version launched with around 550 horsepower, while this one gets 641 from its 3.8 litre flat 6. The 0 to 62 time has shrunk to 2.7 seconds, while the 205 mph top speed is unchanged, but at this level, even slight gains are impressive. But every little detail has been improved. It now generates more downforce, while the new wet weather mode will make the already infallible all-wheel drive system even less likely to get out of shape in bad conditions. The suspension has been upgraded too, with faster reacting dampers and lower springs. It also retains the four-wheel steering to keep it agile and disguise its bulk. And, as with other 992 911s, its cabin is plusher than ever, with gorgeous leathers and a whopping 11-inch infotainment screen. The Turbo has always tipped the 911 into supercar territory, and this one is no different. It'll be competing against Audi R8s and Sport Series cars from McLaren, but it is priced to match. The coupe starts at around £156,000, with the cabrio coming in at around £9,000 more. But is a supercar with the engine hanging right out the back still as competitive as it once was? After all, if you want a German supercar for around the same money, the Audi R8 still offers a huge amount of bang for your buck. While the rest of the supercar world downsizes with turbos and hybrid setups, the R8 prefers the sonic growl of a mid-mounted naturally aspirated 5.2 litre V10. The R8 received a refresh last year, with the V10 performance model putting out 611 brake horsepower, and the standard model also getting a boost up to 562. That means there's plenty of power on tap to reach 62 in 3.1 seconds, thanks to its all-wheel drive system, and a top speed of 206. However, the Porsche has heritage on its side, and some very loyal customers who will no doubt fill the order books in no time. The 911 Turbo continues to do things differently, while remaining as competent as ever.
After the break, a new car from Morgan and the latest Mercedes E-Class.
Still to come, Morgan's new Plus 4. But first,
Mercedes-Benz doesn't usually go too wild with its facelifts. A bit of updated tech, a restyled body panel and a few new options in the paint booth, and jobs are good. And don't fix what ain't broke is perhaps the kindest way of looking at it. But the new Mercedes E-Class is different. Another Geneva Motor Show launch that wasn't to be. The new E-Class has had an overhaul. The brand's best-selling model, which has sold over 14 million units since its inception in 1953, is one of the market's go-to executive saloons. However, this facelift is more than you might realise at first glance. That's because the major changes here are on the tech side. Yes, the back looks a bit different, but the list of driver aids is what Merc is shouting about most. Some of the standard features include brake assist, parking assist and blind spot assist. There's also an optional driver assistance package that includes speed limit monitoring and stop-start assistance. There are also some new engine choices. There's a total of 7 plug-in hybrids across the range, available in petrol and diesel and rear or all-wheel drive. And if that doesn't cause the consumer to scratch their heads, there are also other models that feature 48-volt mild hybrid tech and integrated starter generators. Power ranges between 154 and 362 brake horsepower, and there are rumours of a V8 E63 in the pipeline too, with something over 600 brake horsepower, while a lesser E53 is available from launch. But after you've pondered over a plausible power unit and potential tech, the possibilities continue inside. One of the new features is an updated M-Bux, or Mercedes-Benz user experience to you and I. Simply put, the cockpit can be individualised and adapts to the user via artificial intelligence. This infotainment package includes two 10.25-inch widescreen displays. The central one responds to touch, voice or trackpad control, as well as augmented reality sat-nav that we first saw in the new A-Class. And if 10 inches is not large enough, each screen can be upgraded to 12.3 inches each. The cabin also features a new steering wheel design with capacitive sensors. In other words, the car now knows that the driver is alert without making small steering inputs. But is the new E-Class a bit too clever for its own good? We can't help but feel all these electronics, while clever, might get a little irritating day to day. So if the robotic E-Class isn't for you, what other big German saloons are there? It's been an ongoing competition between 3 German marques for decades. There's the Merc, then the BMW 5 Series and the Audi A6.
Beginning with the Bavarian BMW, and like the Merc, the 5 Series features several engine options. There are 2 petrol plug-in hybrids, 3 petrol engines and 4 diesels, as well as the full-fat M5. On the outside, the 2020 5 Series looks much the same. Like the Merc, it keeps its definitive BMW design elements, and with good reason. A record 2.1 million sales were achieved with the previous gen model. Inside, the 5 Series shares much of its styling with the brand's flagship 7 Series limo, including the latest iDrive system, gesture control and semi-autonomous driving features. It all works superbly and is a real home away from home for any business customer. So what about the Audi A6? Well, the Audi is the simplest to get your head around. There are just 3 engines to choose from, 2 diesels and a petrol, and they all feature a mild hybrid system. A 3rd diesel motor is expected to join the lineup at a later date. And even simpler, there are only 2 trim options to choose from, Sport and S-Line. Compared to the others, the Audi seems like a doddle on the spec front. Speaking of the interior, Audi has certainly splashed out on the standard equipment. Even the base-level Sport interior is equipped with leather seats, dual-zone climate control, ambient LED interior lighting and keyless go.
So is it the class leader then? We're not sure. While the Audi has great standard equipment and a much more comprehensive lineup of engine choice, on the road it lacks the handling of the best. We'd go for the 5 Series. It combines the handling of the E-Class with the comfort of the Audi and retains its class lead.
Nestled deep within Worcestershire's Malvern Hills lies the factory for a car maker like no other. Morgan has been making sports cars for well over 100 years now, and many of the crafting techniques remain unchanged to this day.
However, that hasn't stopped them releasing this, the all-new Plus 4, a car they're calling the most revolutionary advancement in the model's history, with only 3% of the parts being carried over from the old model. That might seem odd at first. After all, this so-called new car looks pretty much identical to the original version launched 70 years ago. It also still uses ash in the frame to shape the body, and it's still hand-built by craftsmen in the same shed in Malvern Link. So what has Morgan done that's so revolutionary? Well, first off, let's really look closely at the styling. While the overall shape will be familiar to any Morgan aficionado, it has been tweaked. It shares the CX platform with its big brother, the 6-cylinder Plus 6, meaning it's a little bit bigger than before. As is tradition though, it is narrower than the 6, helping it to retain those classic proportions. Elsewhere though, the changes are harder to spot. It gets some rather incongruous LED headlights, 15-inch wheels and countless customization options including rear-mounted spare wheels and luggage racks. But it's inside the compact cabin where the Morgan really starts to feel like a product of 2020. It gets a classic yet contemporary minimalist dashboard with a choice of wood or leather trim. It also comes with a beautiful steering wheel that isn't festooned with a million pointless buttons and dials. There's a choice of either a proper old-school manual 6-speed box or a paddle shift automatic, and it's the latter that gives away the new Plus 4's biggest change. Opt for the automatic and you'll notice the BMW shifter, and that's no coincidence. Under the achingly pretty long bonnet that seems to stretch out to the horizon in front of you lies a 2-litre 4-cylinder BMW engine, the same one you'll find in a Z4 and the new entry-level Toyota Supra. The old Ford Duratec unit has been powering 4-cylinder Morgans for donkey's years. So it was about time for a change, especially as the Plus 6 uses a 3-litre BMW motor.
So is this Morgan essentially a British Supra? On the face of it, the 2-litre Supra looks exactly the same as the 3-litre model. It puts out a respectable 254 brake horsepower and hits 62 miles per hour from rest in 5.2 seconds. With its smaller, lighter engine, Toyota claims that the new baby Supra will handle better than the 6-cylinder model, with its 100-kilogram weight saving providing perfect 50-50 distribution across the 2 axles.
But while it may be lighter, it's got nothing on the featherweight Plus 4. With its traditional aluminium and ash construction, it weighs just a ton, allowing it to hit 62 miles per hour in under 5 seconds. That's hair-raising in a car with tiny doors that make you feel as if you'll fall out in a stiff breeze. It has some proper tech though, by which we mean it comes with anti-lock brakes. Top speed is a mildly alarming 149 miles per hour, more than enough in a 2-seater roadster. So with numbers like that, it does beg the question, is this the pick of the current Morgan range? And indeed the pick of the Supra and Z4? Well, it's certainly a more sensible option than the maniacal Plus 6, but you don't buy a Morgan to use every day. The BMW and Toyota are much more usable, but they don't possess even a trace of the Morgan's character. It's as British and beautiful as the Malvern Hills, and while it doesn't really make much sense, we'd have one over a Supra any day.
Join us again next week on AutoMundial as we take a look at the latest muscle car from Dodge.